Okay, so I have not been keeping up with doing social media because I've been busy. Also wrote and published a couple of books. So this is one of them. And this is another. It doesn't have a title on it, sorry. Arch of Salvation. It's also been out on the street over the holidays to give out gospel literature, and I'm working on establishing the nonprofit organization so I can do more work helping people. Primary function to allow me to be nonprofit is ecclesiastical, so continuing my father's work, as my father was a pastor, chaplain in the Army, served in Vietnam, created a nonprofit organization under the name of New Heritage Ministries, which, this is the cards, nope, which I have continued after his death. I really had to start over from scratch because he left very little remaining of the organization because he had gotten really old, like 70s, and slowed down a lot. Anyway, so I just wanted to do a little update here. So the books are out there, you can check them out. The Zeitgeist character is a bounty hunter. Oops. Looking something like armor with this type of body armor, and has a tactical team, and he goes out and he recovers fugitives. The story, he does some time traveling and just some ideas I had been working on for a while, and I finally put it into a book form. But the main function of those books is to promote New Heritage Ministries and to continue the work of primarily teaching people about God and Christ, but as a practical function to help people, like with food, clothing, shelter. The first project I'm going to start with the Super Zet Hilswerk. Super Zet has a new helmet, by the way. The primary thing, the first thing I want to do is collect old toys and then give them out to people who don't have money for toys for families and such. And then I'm just going to see how it goes with that, and hopefully continue to expand the organization to help people. One of the things that's been rattling around in my head the past weeks, those guys playing games in the other room, is like I like to look in the Holy Bible for science. What are you doing?
I respawn outside and have an egg via far as queso.
Really?
Yeah, we're huge. When I ate it,
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So, one of the things like was in my mind is like I have like some type of supernatural gift where I can sense things like people are thinking or feeling, and I don't know if it's like autism spectrum where I can just highly observant, or if it's a supernatural thing. I tend to think it's more supernatural because there's no like physical explanation for it. It's more like I don't want to say psychic, because psychic is like just mind powers. It's more supernatural, having to do with the spirit. And the Bible term for it is, it's a gift of the Holy Spirit, and it's called discernment of spirits. So I have this sensitivity to the supernatural, and I wanted to find places where I can see if I can experience something supernatural. Aside from the fact that we are already a supernatural being in a earthen vessel, I was trying to think of a place I could go and see if I could have a stronger connection to the supernatural. So I was thinking about the Bible and Genesis, where it says Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and God put creatures with a flaming sword to guard the Garden of Eden, keep them out of the Garden of Eden, away from the tree of life. So, and it never says that the flaming sword and the creatures, which is commonly translated into angels, but the Bible doesn't say it's angels. Angels are typically a messenger. It says in the original Hebrew, creatures. And the type of creatures the word uses like cherubim, which is like the same creatures on the Ark of the Covenant. It's winged, four-legged creatures with maybe a human head and face. So I did some research. I was thinking about it, and it struck me what about, I'm where on earth would there be a flaming sword? And the Bible never says it went away. It doesn't say. So I'm there's got to be a place somewhere in the world where the tree of life was or is, and there's a flaming sword around. There's got to be a place like that still, because the Bible never says it went away. So I'm thinking of legends and stories from humanity, and you always got the cradle of earth, from Laura Croft films, and people always looking for the fountain of youth. And so that's in Africa somewhere, in the jungles, unexplored areas, and I'm maybe in the middle of the ocean, Pacific Ocean, where no one is, maybe Antarctica, where people have never been and don't see a flaming sword and creatures. And then one day it just struck me, wait a minute, what about the Northern Lights? And so I looked up, I Googled a photo of the Northern Lights from space, or the polar lights. And it's like a flame going in a circle, pointing all directions. It's shooting up to space. So I'm man, that's really a lot like a flaming sword pointing all directions. And it's crazy accurate to what a flaming sword would be, and it still exists today. So the Bible never says it when it's gone, and it still exists today. So I got a little bit more in the science of the Northern Lights, polar lights, and the science of Earth before the flood of Noah. And there's also Northern Lights in Jupiter, and they're extremely powerful. And it's because Jupiter has more gas in the atmosphere. And before the flood of Noah, Earth also had more gas in the atmosphere, and it had a canopy, which, if you look at the Earth having a canopy over it, and you realize, which they may or may not realize when the Bible was being written, which I think they did know it, that the canopy that you see from standing on the Earth would have been like a rainbow, but you're only seeing half of it when you look in the sky. So the canopy would have been around the entire Earth as a ring. And since the Earth had more greenhouse gases, oxygen, moisture on the surface of the Earth, and less water on the surface of the Earth, and it was more under the Earth, something like 10 miles, the researchers believe, and a ring around the Earth. And according to the Bible, that the water above the Earth, like in the ring, came down, and the waters under the Earth came up. and flooded the entire earth. And during this time, there was like a lot of volcano and earthquake activity. And after the flood, everything started, like the poles, everything started freezing. But as my idea is leaning towards science more than the supernatural, my idea that the creatures and the flaming sword is not actual angelic beings and only a natural phenomenon that people perceived as angelic beings, it's not going to be a popular idea that goes over with the highly religious people, which is unfortunate because some science that we have can very well explain things like the Red Sea parting, like if the Earth's and the sun's poles shifted at the same time, and water is responds highly to vibrations and to magnetic fields. So if these magnetic fields, did a reversal at the same time, it could have synchronized with what God did with freeing the Israelites from Egypt and creating a land bridge across the Red Sea at the Gulf of Aqaba, where there's evidence of chariots being smashed underneath there and the earth being scorched with people's footprints in it from the flaming pillar of fire. Which I tend to lean towards the pillar of fire being like also some type of solar activity. I mean, it's kind of like I'm leaning towards sun worship. I'm not. Is there just a science? The sun is a powerful ball of energy, and it's throwing energy at the earth constantly, which the earth is being shielded by our magnetosphere. I think I'm doing an autistic info dump right now. Sorry, but if you're keeping up with me, cool. I know it's already 10-minute video, 12-minute video, but hey man, relax. You're trying to have fun over there.
What?
Just have fun, man.
Yeah.
Little man?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
That thing scared me.
I believe in the supernatural because I've seen God work in my life. And like I said, I have a supernatural gift. And, I'm going to call it superpower. This fuels my. So I have a superpower. Well, technically, no, it's supernatural, and we all have supernatural gifts if we're born again. So, technically, it's normal. But the key is to vibe with God, to like connect with God, and we can do that through Christ. And Adam and Eve had a connection with God, and they were so pure and holy that clothing didn't matter. It wasn't until they lost their holiness that they were naked, not just spiritually, but they realized they were also physically. Anyway, so bringing it back, the Aurora Borealis or the Northern Lights, polar lights, must have had a lot of energy before the flood of Noah because the atmosphere was more energized with more moisture, oxygen, greenhouse gases. So that means the polar lights would have been much more intense. And there was a random phenomenon of static electricity in a 3M plant where they were doing a roll of tape, went up like in a square from the conveyor, well not conveyor, but a roll of tape that was going, it was like a couple meters wide, a couple meters tall, and it generated underneath it a static field that people could not walk through and they couldn't move. When they got to it, they had to back up to get out of it. And they tried this like late in the day where there's like, it didn't happen, but they found out that it only happened when there was a higher humidity, higher moisture index in the atmosphere and in their factory. So with more moisture in the air, more gases, you have more energy, and things like the Northern Lights, it's photonic energy, it's energized particles from the sun colliding with our magnetosphere. So these energized particles from the sun, it's like before Adam and Eve screwed up, either the polar lights didn't exist yet on Earth. Maybe they were higher above the surface, or they weren't around the Garden of Eden. As the poles shift, the Garden of Eden could have been anywhere on the earth. People tend to say the Middle East because there's rivers named after the original rivers in Eden, the paradise. But you don't have the polar lights there. And I don't believe the polar lights were ever there. The polar lights, which I'm going to call, for the sake of what I'm explaining right now, I'm going to call the polar lights the flaming sword. So the flaming sword, as far as I know, has never been over the Middle East, and it's especially not there now. And looking at the topography under the ice on the earth, like Antarctica, it doesn't look likely that it was where paradise was. It looks to me like the most likely place paradise was, or Eden, was where is now Greenland, because there's rivers that correspond, and there's gold and jewels and stuff at the end of where these rivers are. There's these kind of mines. So to me, Greenland looks like the right place that must have been Eden. And if the fossilized remains of the Tree of Life are there, there would be somewhere under Greenland. But the flood of Noah resurfaced the entire earth, so it's possible that those rivers had nothing to do with Eden. I was trying to figure out, like, would it be the North or South Pole? Because you always have northern and southern polar lights. I think it might be interesting to note that not all planets have polar lights. Like, does Mercury or Venus? Or even Mars? I don't know. I need to research that. But if they don't, then that could also show that perhaps Earth also did not have polar lights at some point. And after Adam and Eve screwed up, God changed the Earth a little bit to make the polar lights the flaming sword. But I haven't explained the creatures in there. I did research the polar lights, and people in Iceland, they see things running around in the polar lights, and they call them firefoxes. And that's where we get the name for the Firefox browser, that they have the little fox with a flaming tail. So there are legends, and like, you can research all of Earth history to find similarities between cultures. Like stories like the flood stories, like every culture has an ancient flood story. They tell them differently than the Bible does, but every culture has a flood story, a flood myth, we can say. And they're eerily similar. So it kind of, like, legends and myths tend to develop from some truth that happened. You know, it's a way of explaining a mystery that people don't understand, so they use stories to explain it. In my stories, what is this? So I got Captain Christian. I republished the same book. It wouldn't let me change the book once I published it, so I did some changes. So we also got Captain Christian 2077, and the Ark of Salvation. My story I'm telling about the Ark of Salvation is, I mean, we have like a show right now called The Ark, and it's a space ark, and it's having problems because they had to escape Earth for whatever reason, because they're saying because of climate change and pollution and all that stuff. But in the Bible, there is something mentioned that the Earth will melt. There will be a great noise, and the elements will melt, and the skies will melt, the heavens will melt. And for me, I mean, maybe it seems like an obsession with the sun, but for me, the sun is going to go super red giant, and in my opinion, that particular story in where is it? I wrote it down. I have it somewhere. That particular story is telling when the sun is going to go not supernova, it's going to go red giant, because the next phase of the sun should be red giant. And scientists believe, calculating by the size of the sun, that it will engulf the Earth's orbit, and the habitable zone will move further out into our solar system. So my story, Arcs of Salvation, Captain Christian, which is a character my dad came up with, but I'm kind of like building on my dad's idea. And Captain Christian is one of generations of Christians, our family by the name of Christian, which also, Pilgrim's Progress has a guy named Christian, and he sort of tells a story, an analogy of a Christian's experience, becoming a Christian and then going through temptation and the Vanity Fair and everything, and eventually making it to heaven. But as my adaptation from my dad, and I come up with this thing, and my idea was based on the fact that the sun is going to go red giant, probably going to be a shock wave, and that will be the noise, the great noise, and then the Earth will be shoved further out into the solar system, and then it's going to be like a New Jerusalem, apparently orbiting the Earth with streets of gold and everything, if I remember it correctly, because I do read my Bible, but just not as much as I used to, and I learned a lot from Dad when I was growing up, and I just, I mean, there's a lot of information in the Bible, 66 books. Some people spend their entire lifetime studying it, and it's always more to learn. And anyway, so I tend to lead towards science, because even though I have supernatural gifts, because maybe the science can prove the Bible is true, because some of these things that we have interpreted in such a way may not be the way that everyone thinks it is. It may be, like I said, the flaming sword pointing all directions is most likely the Northern Lights. And if it is the Northern Lights, and if, say, Greenland was Eden, and those rivers, correspond with the Bible, then there you go. There's proof that the Bible is true scientifically. So I'm sorry if believing that the creatures guarding the Garden of Eden, keeping people away, is just a apparition of the visual effects of the aurora borealis. It's just a play of light, like we see creatures in the clouds and in the stars. I mean, why is that a huge jump to say, okay, in the same way we see things in the stars and the clouds, why can't we see creatures in the polar lights? And when the Earth had more energy in it, why can't that be an actual physical force field to keep people away from the tree of life and out of Garden of Eden? Why can't that be the case? There's been enough angel sightings, like when Christ died, when Mary was conceived Christ through supernatural means, when Joseph, there's like plenty of supernatural angel sightings. Why can this one not be just, it's like even on the Ark of the Covenant, there are creatures, but there are sculptures, right? So why can't the Northern Lights be, even still today, the flaming sword and the creatures? Why not? I'm not trying to take away from the supernatural. I'm just trying to say, look, man, this is probably what it is. You know, the Bible is true, and we have evidence here. Flaming sword, creatures. Maybe that's the Garden of Eden, where Greenland now is. All of the plants on the earth, the whole earth, like all the plants and animals before the flood died, except for one family. You probably had sharks coming up and eating survivors from the flood that had little boats, and because God was going to make sure everybody that was bad before the flood, everybody was gone. So you got these maybe people floating on a raft or a tree trunk, but after a while, trees sink. You know, they absorb the water and they sink. So people's floating on rafts or tree trunks eventually would sink, and there were probably huge fish. And they're like, you know what? All of you fish, you have to make sure all of those humans that are bad for the flood do not survive the flood. Only one family in the ark. So people want to think, well, maybe it was a local flood, you know, but that just doesn't fit. It just doesn't make sense according to why the flood occurred. And I don't know, that's another discussion anyway. So I've already done a little 30-minute video. I am trying to do sort of a ministry here. Well, I am trying to do it. It's not sort of a ministry. It is a ministry. I don't know. The new superhero mask has pointy edges sticking out. I have to take care of that. Anyway, I hope I imparted some knowledge and some constructive ideas that people can think about, and you know, maybe explore the Bible and science, and get closer to God, find faith in God, or just build on your faith. At some point, I'm going to need to, well, actually, it's going to be a question of how to fund the ministry. Dad always had a church that he worked with, and I had a church I was working with, but I had a problem with the pastor, and that didn't work out. So, yeah, that's another story, and if you know, you know. But anyway, so at some point we're going to be needing to operate with funds. My plan is to take donations, but one of the funding concepts I had was fugitive recovery, so I don't have to like beg people to support, you know, to donate, which is going to happen anyway. It's a nonprofit organization, but I'm still waiting for some paperwork to come through. New Heritage Ministries can be donated if you can find the links. I would verify, though, if you're going to donate online, because our family has had a lot of identity thieves. So if you want to donate, then contact us first to get verified, the real deal. If you want to donate to New Heritage Ministries. The Supers at Hillsfork is still waiting for some paperwork from the judge to continue to be established and authorized to operate in Germany. And after the judge approves the paperwork, which is approved part of it, I just had to approve another part to promise to help Germans and not spend the donations outside of Germany, which is cool, man. The New Heritage Ministries can help outside of the country as well, because that doesn't have that restriction. It just has an antitrust stipulation. But yeah, I just been wanting to share that for a couple weeks now, and fugitive recovery aspect is very difficult in Europe because It's not like the USA where some states offer a bounty on criminals, even if it's something petty. It can be as low as $100, you know. But working with the United States, there are ways to recover fugitives in Europe. It just requires a tactical team and kind of a lot of expense. So, which I do not have at the moment, but there are other ways to recover fugitives besides tactical teams and computer hacking and all that. You know, you can the Lord can guide you to someone that is a criminal or fugitive, and you know, it's mostly in Europe. The Interpol, you have to work with Interpol, and privacy laws are a lot more strict in Europe than they are in the United States. So it's harder to expose criminals, and it's also harder to find them because their privacy is very well protected, which former Third Reich fugitives used that to their advantage for a while. Those guys are getting really old by now and slowly dying off, so they're not a problem as they used to be. But anyway, in the story, the Zeitgeist bounty hunter works internationally and through time and space to capture fugitives, and time travels with the help of the angel from Revelation that took John. Was it John son of Thunder? I think it is John son of Thunder. One of Christ's disciples, was he? I think he was. And took him to places in the future to see things that were going to happen. So in my idea, I take that character and that angel, and Zeitgeist works with him, the angel, to travel through time to recover fugitives, to find the organization to help people rehabilitate from being bad to good, or just to find Christ and salvation and healing of their soul. Anyway, so this video is a lot longer. I'm sorry, I do not have good video making and editing skills. I just come here and share what I can, and it ends up being 15, 20 minute, 20, 30 minute videos, sometimes 45 minutes. And if you're bored and have nothing to do and want to watch my videos, cool. Hopefully at some point I get enough to be monetized, and kind of had an idea to do little play stories like Mr. Rogers did. You know, there's very few wholesome things like that for kids, and it's a struggle to find wholesome things to teach my kid about being, you know, a good kid, a good person, and about, you know, Christ, and, you know, why you're being good, you know, why to be a good person. Maybe if you don't believe in God or Christ, there are a lot of advantages and benefits to being a good person, you know. It's good for your soul, it's good for the community. I mean, goodness, the word's derived from God, you know, like godliness, goodness. So it's like, I don't understand why people don't make the connection. They just want to deny God exists, or just don't want to believe. But whatever, man. God bless. God bless you if you're watching this video. If you want to support New Heritage Ministries, please do. I have, to protect the existence of the organization, I cannot do anything illegal with funds that are donated. I have to use them to support helping people, operations helping people, like giving food, clothes, toys, whatever, you know. So, you know, it's a legit organization. I can show my registered tax information if you want to donate, and I can send you a receipt, or if you donate through PayPal, your statement will read New Heritage Ministries, so you will have proof of what you donated that you can use as a tax deduction. Still working on that for Germany for the Superset Hilfswerk, but when that happens, I was homeless and I refused to be a bum on the street. I was living off of my veterans benefits, and I just hate to ask people for help, like financial help. But when you're an organization that doesn't make profit, you probably have to go to help people. My plan is to, in fact, have a business operation where I recycle, and people donate stuff and I recycle it and sell the stuff we recycle, So there's going to be, if it works out according to plan, there's going to be a self-sustaining business that takes donations or buys material and produces a product, whether it be toys, books, If you buy my Kindle books, also the Superset books, comics, if you buy those on Amazon, the profit goes into the New Heritage Ministries account. So, you get something for it. You get a story to read, a book to read. It's a promotion tool for the New Heritage Ministries, and the money will go to help people. So I already have a thing running, and I just don't have, and I've also run a few promotions of the books, mostly for people who can read it for free. But if you want to support the ministry right now, then, check out my books, man. So anyway, God bless.